do have a different brain, men
L'uguaglianza
and
tra donne e
women.
uomini è
Equality
fondamentale a
between
livello
men and
sociale
women
e
is key at
politico, questo
social
è
and political
indiscutibile.
level. This
Ma
is,
tutti ci siamo
there's no doubt
chiesti almeno
about
una
it, but
volta
at least
se
once we
percepiamo
asked
le
ourselves if we
emozioni, se
perceive
pensiamo, se ci
emotions, if we
comportiamo allo
think, if we
stesso
behave
modo
in the
oppure
same
no,
way or
e se
not,
questo
and
derivi
if
da
this is the
differenze nel
result
nostro
of
cervello.
differences in our
In
brain.
medicina non
In
sappiamo
medicine,
ancora il
we still
perché
don't know
alcune malattie
why some
neurologiche e
neurological diseases
psichiatriche
and psychiatric
interessano di più i
diseases
maschi
affect
o le
men more
femmine.
than
Gli studi
women.
sulle differenze tra
Studies on
cervello maschile e
differences between
femminile sono un
men,
argomento di
female, and
estremo
male
interesse
brain
per
are
tutti, ma
extremely
come
interesting
vedremo
for all,
le opinioni
but there
scientifiche
are
sono ancora molto
discrepant scientific
discordanti.
opinions.
Gli studi sono
Studies
iniziati molti anni
were
fa e
started
si
a
sono
long time ago, and they
focalizzati
focused
sul
mainly
volume
on the
di alcune
volume
aree
of
cerebrali
some brain
studiate
areas
mediante la risonanza
studied
magnetica
through
nucleare, sulla
MRI,
quantità di
and
neuroni,
the
che sono
number
le
of
cellule del
neurons,
nostro
which are
cervello,
the
e di
cells of our brain, and
neurotrasmettitori, che sono delle molecole
neurotransmitters,
che
which
funzionano
are
da messaggeri tra un
molecules
neurone e
working as
l'altro.
messengers
Sono
between
stati effettuati
neurons.
degli studi
So
mediante
tests
dei
were
test
carried out through
psicocomportamentali e cognitivi,
behavioral
cioè di test che sono
tests,
andati a studiare le funzioni
studying
superiori come
the
memoria,
higher
apprendimento
functions like
e
memory and
linguaggio.
learning and
Gli studi
language.
sono stati effettuati
Studies were
sia su modelli
performed on
animali che su donne
human
e
and
uomini.
men and on
La
human.
prima cosa da dire
The first
importante è
thing
che
to
quando noi
say
guardiamo
is
una
that when we
risonanza
look
magnetica, lo
at an
facciamo tutti i
MRI,
giorni in
and we do this
ospedale,
every day in a
di un
hospital,
cervello, noi non
of a brain,
possiamo
we
distinguere ad
cannot
occhio nudo se si
distinguish
tratti di un
by
uomo o di
naked
una
eye
donna.
if it is a man
Quindi gli
or
studi
the
sono
MRI of a man or a woman. So
focalizzati
studies
su delle
focused
differenze
mainly on
minime, non visibili ad
minor
occhio
and
nudo, e hanno
differences
utilizzato,
not
oltre alla
visible
risonanza
to a
magnetica
naked eye,
morfologica, quella che
or
utilizziamo
through a
nella pratica
morphological
clinica comune,
MRI that we
anche delle
use
risonanze
every day. We
speciali,
also have
come la
special
risonanza
MRI,
magnetica
like the
funzionale,
functional
nella quale
MRI,
alcune aree
through which
cerebrali
some brain
si
areas are
attivano quando
activated
vengono effettuati dei
when
compiti specifici,
specific
ad
tasks are
esempio il
performed.
movimento della
For
mano
example, the movement
attiva
of a
la
hand
regione motoria della
activated
mano, e
the
questo viene
region of the
visualizzato
hand
mediante un
moving.
software con un
This is
cambiamento
visualized
del
through a
colore a
software
livello della
changing the
risonanza.
color in
E
the
poi sono
MRI.
state
And
effettuate delle
then
altre risonanze
other
speciali
special
che vanno a
MRI were
studiare
performed
invece
studying
i fasci di
the
sostanza bianca che
bundles
connettono
of
le
white
diverse regioni
substance
del
connecting the
cervello.
different areas of the brain.
Le ipotesi degli studi sulle
The
differenze
assumptions on the study
tra
of the
cervello
difference
maschile e
between
femminile sono che
women
fattori
and
biologici
male
insieme a fattori ambientali
difference
determinano
between
delle differenze a
environmental
livello della
factors that
struttura e della
determine
funzione del nostro
differences in
cervello,
the
che
structure
a
and
loro
function of
volta
our
sono alla
brain,
base di
which are at the basis
comportamenti,
of
attitudini e
attitudes,
ruoli
behaviors,
differenti
and
negli
different
uomini e nelle
roles
donne.
in men and
I
women.
fattori biologici sono
Biological
due. Sono da
factors
un lato gli
are
ormoni
two
sessuali, che
sexual
sono
hormones on the
prodotti
one side, which are
principalmente dai
mainly
gonadi, quindi
produced
da
by
ovario e
gonads, so
testicoli, sono
ovaries and
principalmente
testicles,
gli estrogeni
which are
nelle
mainly
donne
estrogens
e il
in women and
testosterone negli
testosterone
uomini.
in
E
men.
questi ormoni
And these
agiscono sul
hormones
cervello
act
fin dalla
on
nostra vita in
the brain
utero,
since
e il
our
cervello
life in
è
the
ricco di
uterus.
recettori per
The
questi
brain
ormoni.
is
Sono
rich
così
in receptors of
importanti che
these
il cervello
hormones.
è in
They are
grado
so
in parte
important
di
that the brain
sintetizzarli
can
in sede, i
synthesize them
cosiddetti
in
neurosteroidi.
situ.
Il secondo
The
fattore
second
biologico
biological
è rappresentato
factor
dai
is
cromosomi
represented by
sessuali.
sexual
Maschi e femmine
chromosomes.
si
Men
differenziano
and
per
women
una
are
coppia di
differentiated by a
cromosomi.
couple
Il
of
maschio è il portatore
chromosomes.
della coppia
Male
XY
is
e la donna
bearing
di una coppia di
XY,
cromosomi
while women
XX.
XX
Adesso
chromosome.
insieme vi racconterò di
Now I
questi
will try
studi,
and
faremo
talk
una
to you about these
carrellata, una
studies.
sintesi
We
di come li
will
ho
do an
imparati io in
we will
questi
look
ultimi
at these
anni,
studies. I
e
have
vi dirò
studied them
subito, ve
over
l'ho
the
già
years, and
detto,
I will tell you right
che
away
non c'è ancora un
that there's still
consenso.
no
Le critiche le riporto
consensus.
tutte alla fine
I
per
will show
questione di
you all
tempo,
the
quindi
criticisms
ricordatevi che
at the
quello che
end.
dico in
So
realtà
remind
è stato
that
messo
what
in
I've been
discussione,
said has been
e
questioned,
alla fine vi
and at
porterò
the end I
alla
will
teoria
talk to you
attuale più
about the current
accreditata.
theory, the most accredited one.
Però ancora quando si legge di
When
questo
we
tema
read about this
emergono
topic,
tutti
we
questi concetti di
see
cui ora
these
vi parlerò.
concepts I
A
will
livello di
talk to you about
anatomia
now. At the
leggiamo che le
anatomical
dimensioni del
level,
cervello
the
maschile
size
sono
of the
mediamente
main
superiori.
brain
Gli
is
uomini hanno il cervello
larger.
più
Men
lateralizzato, cosa
have a
vuol
more
dire? Vuol dire che ha
lateralized brain.
maggiori
In other words, it
connessioni
has more
all'interno di un singolo
connections
emisfero,
inside a
mentre
single
le donne
hemisphere,
hanno
while
più
women have more
connessioni,
connections
quindi
more matter of white matter between the two hemispheres. And according to some authors, this is as the basis of the famous multitasking characteristics among women. Different brain areas were studied. For example, hippocampus, which is this area in green, which is an area which has this shape, which is in depth in the temporal lobe, which is very important for the memory, and the amygdala, which is this almond shape, which is very important in the circuits of emotions. And according to some studies, they have different size and functions. As I was saying, also neurotransmitters were analyzed, these messages of informations between neurons. Here we see some studies and differences in serotonin, which is a very important neurotransmitter for mood and sleep. When we deal depression, so we use drugs acting on this neurotransmitter. According to some authors, a difference in this system of serotonin could be a cause of anxiety and depression among women. Another neurotransmitter that was studied is dopamine, very important for the response to stress and movement control. Differences emerged in these neurotransmitters, and they assumed they play a role, but this is not confirmed yet, in two serious diseases involving these neurotransmitters. One is the Parkinson's disease and schizophrenia, which are prevalent among men. Very interesting are the studies on psychology and behavior, supporting the thesis that before 1 year of age, before children are capable of recognizing their sex, they already have preferences in place. Girls react more rapidly to faces, and they speak earlier. Some authors assume that this is at the basis of biological basis of better recognition of emotional status with regard to faces. And speaking earlier is probably related to a better verbalization of emotions by girls, while boys interact with visual changes. And according to some psychological studies, women are more oriented towards people, while men towards things. And this is why there are decisions towards certain professions, more technical professions, between men and women. Cognitive tests are very interesting, and from these tests we see the most renowned discovery, and that is man appears to be more
in qualche maniera migliore in tutti quelli che sono i
better in
compiti
all
viso-spaziali.
visual and spatial tasks. This is shown by a very simple test of a mental rotation of an object that should be visualized, and you should say that if it is the same object or not. And men are more capable and more reactive, and they have a better orientation in the labyrinth test, and they have a procedural memory, that is the memory that we activate when we perform tasks like driving, and where we don't have to repeat in your head, and we do things automatically. And according to some studies, also men are more capable in mathematics, and this aspect was not confirmed. However, according to some studies, this is at the basis of a digital gender gap that exists in some countries. At the cognitive level, women appears to be better with regard to language, verbal memory, in writing, reading. They have a better fluency, a better explicit memory, a better recovery of long-term memory as well. While with regard to labyrinth test, women orient themselves by having points of reference. When we talk about emotions, we should also mention the autonomous nervous system, which is involuntary. It has a central brain control and connections with all our organs, and when we feel an emotion, the first sign comes from the autonomous nervous system, the one that makes our heart beat faster, makes our hands sweat, or makes us feel like goosebumps. And so some studies showed how with this system, which has a balance, the heart accelerates, reduces the heartbeats, there is sweat, salivation. This balance, with this nervous system, in this system, what men are more active to the orthosympathetic system, which is increasing pressure, dilating the pupil, or reacting to a threat, while women have more a parasympathetic system active for relax and recovery to a balance. Several studies on emotions tested the heartbeat, sweat, and the response of the autonomous nervous systems to emotional stimulus with very different results. From the studies I just mentioned, it shows that there should be two categories of individuals. Biologically determined, biology would have a primordial memory driving our behaviors. And these studies support the theory of sexual bimorphism, two brains, a female brain and a male brain driven by biology, that these differences are relevant and they have a meaning from an evolution standpoint to ensure survival of the species. All of these studies had a major mediatic impact with books and articles, and it was also women are less prone to mathematics, and that is not true. And the differences between men and women are in the brain. And then we say first census of brain made on mice. And so these authors of the past years reanalyzed all of these studies I just mentioned, and they saw that they have many weak points. And from a biological theory, we make us think that maybe the environment has a major impact on our brain, and they lead us to the mosaic or multimorphism model. These are the criticisms. These data are made on small groups with minor differences and contradictory results. So it's very difficult to see that, in other words, the size of the brain is in relation with the size of the person, and the hands and feet are bigger in men, so it's normal that also the brain is bigger. And then the connections, from what we know, also this has to do with size. A bigger brain, connections and transmissions of nervous impulses on a long bundle is less effective, and so there are intermediate steps. It's not a matter of gender. And then all psychocognitive tests are influenced by expectations. It depends on the expectations, on the gender stereotypes to which we are subjected till our early age. And so we will talk about later on, and we see how women respond to empathy tests by responding to the expectation of the gender stereotype. Also with regard to math, we've seen that if women are shown a test telling them that there is a math test, we know women are less prone to math, but this test they perform worse rather than if they are not told about this test. So they respond to expectation and to gender stereotype. Environment plays an important role. We are influenced by gender stereotypes since our early age. Our brain is very plastic. Our brain can change function and structure even during the adult life, and it is influenced by our living environment. This is what we've seen in this famous concept of the man that is more oriented. And we've seen that even young girls who are trained with video games as a Tetris, where there is spatial orientation, they have scores similar to the ones of boys. Very important, hormones, sexual hormones, testosterone and estrogens are socially modulated. They are not something fixed or rigid, but they modify depending on the environment. We've seen that testosterone reduces in caring for children and increases in competitive environments. Studies on plasticity, what is important is the one performed on the London test, having to study the maps of London, and they've seen that their hippocampus at the end of this period was changed. Very interesting also to see, to understand how plastic our brain is, that fathers with mother functions, raising their children without a mother figure, activated the same emotional and cognitive circuits related to oxytocin, which is the hormones of birth and delivery, and the one of hugs of women. So our brain adapts to the environment and responds to the need of our environment. So our biology is modified. So we don't have two separate brains, but a brain which is like a mosaic with female and male characteristics, which can be adapted depending on the environment we live in. This applies which is shown by MRI. This chart shows thousands of MRI. Every line is an MRI, so a brain. The different columns are the brain regions, and they were divided, and the female and male characteristics in blue, pink and white, and we see a mix of characteristics of blue and pink or white. And the same applies to psychological tests, where we've seen that tests analyzing personality, attitudes, and interest traits, also related to gender stereotypes, show that most people have all the feature, female and male characteristics. So we all have female and male characteristics. So to conclude, some of these are myth. Biological sectors exist. They are important. They have an influence on our brain, hormones, sexual chromosomes. But things are more complicated than that, as they've been described so far. There is a continuous interaction between different variables. The environment plays a key role. Hormones can are adjusted depending on the environment we live in, and the epigenetic, also the expression of our genes changes depending on our environment. So two twins, monozygote, living in different environments at a given point in their life, they will also appear differently because of a different expression of their genes. There are no two categories of brains, but there is important overlapping and variability. Most of the brains is unique, and it has female and male characteristics. Each one of us has all of these potentials. This is what matters. The studies in the past were very brave, but I think that in the future we should start from new assumptions, not the ones we used starting from stereotypes, but we should start from the diseases characterizing men and women, and maybe in this way, going backwards, we can understand more. This is a quotation from Carlo Rovelli, saying that we interact with the world with our brain. We are immersed in this world, and we exchange information continuously.
anche probabilmente lo stesso vale per il
And this
nostro modo di
applies also for
interpretare
our way of
i ruoli di
interpreting
donne e
the
uomini
role
nel
of
nostro
men and
tempo, nel
women
luogo in cui
in
viviamo
our time
e
where
anche
we
nel
and
vivere
also
le
in
nostre
living
emozioni.
our
Grazie.
emotions. Thank you.
Grazie mille, bravissima.